You're listening to Everything Out There with your host, Steve Stockton.
Hello, friends. Hello, everybody. Welcome back once again. Everything Out There on the Clyde Lewis Ground Zero Radio Network. I'm your host, Steve Stockton. And join me again tonight. He's back with me, Eric Freeman Sims. You might know him from the Unseen Paranormal Podcast, among other things. Eric, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. Glad to have you back with us. Another
Yeah.
episode here. This is actually episode 48. It's hard to believe I've been doing this for almost a year already, weekly episodes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. That's
been a
awesome.
lot of fun. Had some stellar guests, you included. So what you been up to lately? It's been a little while since we talked. It's been a hot minute.
Yeah. So I went and bought a 200-year-old house. So,
Okay.
it went from a crazy idea. I had a Facebook page pop up, old houses, $100,000 and beyond, and just started looking at them and started seeing how cheap they were and how much like this history is going to be lost if people don't save these old houses. And I got my better half on board, and we figured out the money situation and how much like budget wise we could do. So we started looking, and we found this house. We live outside of Nashville in Middle Tennessee, but we found this house in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, which is not far across the state line, and called the Night House, and it is the oldest house in that county and in that city, still standing. And it was built between 1815 and 1820, and we kind of negotiated with the owners that owned it, and they were ready to get rid of it. So we got a really good deal and bought this massive, over 5,000 square foot house on 2.8 acres, and are working on renovating it. And found out that it's extremely haunted as well. So,
Wow. 5,000 square feet. How many bedrooms and baths does that equate to?
so it has. So the house it's been occupied pretty much its entire 200-year history, which is almost unheard of. You know, at some point in time, a lot of these old houses get abandoned
Yeah.
and kind of go derelict, but this house never has that I can find in the history. And so it's been added on to multiple times, and the floor plan's been changed. We're pretty sure that like staircases have been pulled out and new ones put in and things like that moved around. So right now, as it stands, it's essentially three full baths and 5 bedrooms.
Wow.
Yeah, and that includes the summer kitchen. So the summer kitchen, which for anybody who doesn't know, back in the 1800s, these big rich houses would have had a separate kitchen to cook in the summer, a separate building out back. And so they didn't heat the house up. Also, things tend to catch on fire more in the summer. So if the summer kitchen burned down, it didn't burn the whole house down.
Yeah.
And in the wintertime, they cook in the basement in a huge hearth in the basement. So the owners that we bought it from, they actually built a wing off the house that is the modern kitchen, and they attached with this wing. There's a laundry room, and then it attached the summer kitchen. So that already had a bathroom added onto it in the 40s or 50s when they had a domestic helper, like from the movie Help, who lived there, and she actually lived in the summer kitchen and cooked and cleaned and all that stuff for them. And so that's the 5th bedroom there, and it's the house is massive.
Yeah, I looked at pictures right there. It almost looks like it may have been a school or some other kind of building at some other time. Has it been anything other than a private home?
Not as far as I found in the history. Like I said, it was built between 1815 and 1820, and up until 1860, when the Knight family bought it, it had been through like 10 different people, and so it wasn't. For some reason, people just didn't keep the house very long before they handed it off. And then the Knight family lived there from 1860 until 1941. So they have like the longest lineage there in the house and the most history. But as far as I know, it's always been a residence. And the reason it looks kind of funny is because, like I said, it's been added onto and changed. And so the original house, when you look at the pictures, was just the red brick structure, and it's Federalist style.
Yeah.
And with the Federalist style, it's very blocky. You know, think about building a house with Lego blocks.
Yeah.
You
Got the
very blocky.
portico, got the columns and stuff. Yeah, it's got that look about it.
Well, the columns were added when they switched it over to Greek Revival in the 1880s.
Yeah.
So that big side portico with all those big columns wouldn't have been there, and they would have had a very small front porch. And the front porch wasn't added which actually the front porch goes up to the second level of the house.
Yeah, I see that. That's
Yeah.
it's unusual, but in a good way. I like it.
Yeah. It's
Now,
that the house is
uh,
actually 6 different levels.
yeah.
It has a full cellar, has a half basement, and then you go on up to the attic is the 6th level, so
Now, have you been doing renovations and things on it? I'm guessing, or you kind of
yeah.
trying to leave it as is for now, or
We are, we're renovating as and we're basically rehabbing, not necessarily renovating because 'cause we're not changing anything. We don't wanna change anything about the house because 'cause it's been changed so much. But the wing that I was talking about that they added on with the modern kitchen, laundry room, and even the summer kitchen, they had gutted, and so it was just studs when we bought the house, and so there's no kitchen in the house right now. So we've done a lot of work with fixing the plumbing, and then right now we've got mudding and taping drywall. And coming here soon in the next week or so, we should be able to start to paint and then put down the flooring in that whole area and put in cabinets and appliances and all that stuff. So
yeah,
that's kind of
sounds
where our
like
focus
a
has been.
lot of work, but if you enjoy it, I guess it's not too much. I mean, it's you investing in your own future there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you, do you have plans to turn it into like a haunted B&B, or are you just going to live there and enjoy it, or what do you see beyond once you get it up and running to your satisfaction?
So we're already up and running, and as far as paranormal investigations, so teams can rent it out for a half night or a full night already to investigate. And we have, if you spend the night, we have beds for everybody to sleep in and things like that. So we're already up and running as far as that. I just started scheduling those for September, so we're almost full for September. We're going to do a lot of the paranormal stuff, especially coming up spooky season. We're going to do some, hopefully, if the city allows me to. I'm working with the city codes department.
Yeah,
Let me do some public ghost hunts as well to let people in. But I've been doing private history tours and things through there. Um, we had to get the house to a certain state before we could even get it insured. So a lot of things that we've done, like put a handrail on the front porch, a new handrail, and actually handrail going up the front steps, things like that. There was a big trench around the house where they had fixed the foundation, and but hadn't backfilled it, and so the water was still getting in the basement and the cellar. So we had to backfill it and had to do a lot of that, put siding on part of the house and all this other stuff before it was safe enough for them to actually insure us to let people in the house. But yeah, um, we not only want to focus on the paranormal, we want to focus on the history as well. So I've
yeah.
got we got plans to do a lot of events and things on the property. Like I said, it's almost on 3 acres, so pretty good sized property as
Yeah,
well.
good sized piece there just to sit and chill out. Now, talking about the history of the place, is there anything unusual in there? Anything that would point toward it being haunted? Maybe a family curse, or something, a murder, or something strange there, or anything like that? Or
I'm still digging into the history. We've owned the house for going on 5 months, and I found out a lot. I haven't found anything salacious like that. Excuse me. I haven't found anything salacious like that. Um, but every member of the Knight family died in the house and had their wake in the house.
hmm,
So, and also the Rogers family who bought it in the late 40s, pretty much their whole immediate family, except for the oldest son who's still living, they three of them died in the house. So the mother, father, and the youngest son died in the house as well. And so there's a lot of death associated with the house. I haven't quite got to the people that owned it before the Knights yet. I haven't dug into that. I've been digging into the Knight and the Rogers families. Um, Now on the property, there was a dead body found in the early 1900s that was a murder victim that was on the edge of the property.
oh wow,
Um, yeah, so one of the Knight daughters, Ida, she used to ride side saddle with a dress on and full Victorian getup in a dress, the choker and all that stuff,
yeah,
with a shotgun, and she'd ride side saddle on a horse around the property because they're very eccentric kind of private people. And she found the body on her rounds one morning. It was right beside the road on their fence line. And so far that's only murder, anything salacious like that I found. But the family is really interesting, and like I said, multiple generations, lived there, and passed away there as well.
yeah. Now, is there a family plot there? Is there the graveyard on the property?
There is not. That's a question I get a lot, and the reason that there's not is because we're only about a quarter mile from downtown Hopkinsville, and so since they were so close to Hopkinsville, to the town, they're actually buried for all the rich people in that town, the socialites. the thing to do is be buried in Riverside Cemetery, and so that's where the majority of the family is buried. As far as I know, they never had a family plot on the property.
Yeah. Now, is this the same Hopkinsville where the Hopkinsville Goblin is from?
It is, and actually, it's funny because last night we were just at the Alien Invasion Day, celebrating the 69th anniversary, and I actually got to meet Geraldine Sutton and bought one of her books last night.
Oh,
And
wow. I had her on a show of mine. I don't even remember which channel it was on. It's been years and years ago, but that's a fascinating story.
yeah, I'm gonna actually talk to her about coming on the show, and she's gonna come on my show on the Unseen Paranormal and chat with me here soon. But next year they're planning on doing a big shindig for it, a
For
big convention
the
called Goblin Con.
70th year, yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully I plan on being part of that. I think I'm actually going to be on the planning committee for that, so that'll be pretty fun. But yeah, it's the same Hopkinsville as the Kelly Hopkinsville Goblin, the Green Goblin incident back in the 50s. And there's even a page on Facebook called Keep Hopkinsville Weird, because
Yeah.
also Hopkinsville was the home of Edgar Casey,
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
the sleeping prophet, and so his family's still there. They still, I mean, the Caseys are still there
No,
in
I've read
Hopkinsville.
several of his books. Now, is he buried there? I don't know that much about what
He
happened to him afterwards.
he is. He's buried in the Riverside Cemetery. Yeah. Yeah, and actually, one of the houses he lived in is not there anymore, but it was right across the street from our house, from the night house,
Oh, wow.
and all that's
So,
left is a sidewalk. But the house burned, I believe, and they tore it down.
yeah, that's cool though. That one little town there's got this just pocket of strangeness there with all this
Yeah,
stuff going on. And there's a lot of places like that in these little southern places, in particular, in these little communities and stuff. There's once you start digging into the history, you find out all manner of things.
yeah, and you always hear about Eastern Kentucky with like Hellier films, and the high strangeness in Eastern Kentucky with the Mothman,
Yeah,
uh, right across the river and all that stuff. But yeah, Christian County, Hopkinsville seems to be kind of in Western Kentucky, kind of the hotbed of all the paranormal stuff that's going on in that part of Kentucky.
yeah, I love it. And you mentioned your show, the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. What's going on over there lately?
So I've taken a mental health break right now, but I'm on season 5. The show is doing really, really well. I've had some great guests here lately that I really enjoy talking to. I've got some great guests coming up that I'm excited about that I can't announce yet. Um, but yeah, it's still going strong, going really strong. Actually, I just got some rankings from Good Pods, which is to me it means more than being on like Apple charts, because Good Pods is just a podcast app, and I was in the top 30 for society and culture, which is
Oh,
a huge category. So
good deal.
yeah,
Congratulations. Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, still in the top 2% in the world. So it's going really well.
Yeah. It's just keep on keeping on. Now, I think last time I talked to you, you were working on a book. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, since I was going to finish it earlier this year, but since we started looking for a house, it's become a big project. The house has, so I've kind of put that on back burner. I've got about half written, and so I'm going to have lots of time at the night house to sit in the office while teams investigate. So hopefully I'll get it done this fall and have it out next year. That is the plan and the goal. I have all the research is done. I've just got to collate the rest of it into the other half of the book.
Yeah, you've got the hardest part done. Then maybe I don't know. It could go either way. Um, I'm the same way. I published my 20th book last year, and I'm working on number 21. But I think it's going to end up being a series because I'm almost at 100,000 words, and I'm probably going to break that into 2 or 3 volumes anyway. But um, kind of like you, the house, me and the baby. We got the
Right.
baby coming up. I was just telling you before the show. As of this recording, tomorrow will be 17 days until the absolute due date, and they won't let him go beyond the 40 weeks. So if he doesn't get here sooner, so that's kind of taken up all my time, and everything else is pretty much had to
Yeah.
take a back burner. Still do this show and still do stuff on missing persons and mysteries and Tales Untold, just not as much, but really enjoying it over there. Had a new kind of a renaissance on missing person mystery since I came back in January. And
Yeah.
I think currently I'm sitting at, look here and tell you, a little over 303,000 subscribers, and then Tales Untold, I think I'm 112, 113 or something over there,
Wow.
113K. But just I liked covering those missing person cases, and I like doing the immersive storytelling on Tales
Yeah.
Untold. That's what I rebranded that one as when I moved among the missing stuff over to missing persons and mysteries. Now you cover some missing person cases, don't you, on Unseen Paranormal?
I've done some weird ones, especially the ones that kind of cross over with some paranormal elements, possibly in the stories, because there are quite a few out there that just have some of those weird elements where the people were involved in some paranormal things, or um, there's one in particular story where the nobody knew he was into this stuff, but some guy left a letter behind in his vehicle, and it took him a long time to find it. But was talking about he wanted to go join the Fae, and they found his truck out in the swamp, and he was a younger guy and completely missing, and nobody ever seen it coming because he was in college, and I think he was supposed to take exams that day or something, and he didn't show up, and they found his clothes perfectly folded on the shore of this swampy area, and the note that he wrote was like hidden way up in like a wheel well of his Jeep Cherokee or something like that, about
Right.
joining the Fae, and that he had come across them, and he wanted to join them and travel with them, and yeah, he just disappeared and
And then he
never seen anything.
disappeared. So maybe he got his wish there.
Yeah. So yeah, covering some of those cases like that, like I said, have a paranormal element. But I send you stuff on missing people all the time, so
Yeah.
especially the weird ones. So I'm definitely interested in the missing person stuff.
And one episode here that I wanted to ask you about, debunking the Warrens. I hear
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff about the Warrens. I'm up here in Warren country, close to it. They're big in New England. Um, and yeah, I just you don't hear a lot of good things about them anymore. They were popular, back in the 70s and things, but I've heard some not
Uh,
nice things about them. What's your take on the Warrens?
so with that episode, I had Stevie, who does Truth or Demons podcast, and she started her podcast out. Well, it's a video cast; you can watch it on YouTube as well. But she started out because she wanted to know the real story behind the Conjuring movie. And she was just being curious, and she went down the rabbit hole of the Warrens and found out that, of course, most of the movie was wrong, and that even the story that the Warrens put out was completely wrong about what happened to the parents and how much they were involved. And she kind of went down that rabbit hole and found out, well, they were liars about a lot of things.
Yeah, they definitely like to embellish stuff.
Yeah,
And I know Dudleytown and a lot of stuff in Connecticut there. They just kind of took a little seed, took a little nugget of truth, and ran with it there.
yeah. And they would kind of insert themselves where they weren't even asked to go. Like with the Conjuring house, that they just showed up.
It showed up. Yeah.
Yeah. And the infield poltergeist, they did the same thing. And I think, in my opinion, after talking to Stevie and all the things that I've researched with the Warrens over the years, I think they started out with good intentions.
Yeah. And just
Um,
kind of got
yeah,
caught up in the fame and the trappings and
yeah,
the,
and the money,
yeah.
and with
And,
movie and book deals and selling
we
rights and
were
things.
watching something. I don't remember what it was, but it was about the Warrens. And in the audience, she was in there. The Miss Warren she had a cameo in it. I said, "There she is. That's Miss Warren." But I don't remember. I don't remember what it was we were watching.
Yeah, they first came on my radar back when she was on Paranormal State. Like, I knew about them, but seeing her on that show, Paranormal State, kind of got me thinking, there's something to these people. But if you go back and watch like different interviews they did that you can find on YouTube throughout the years, they contradict themselves over and over again. And if you tell the truth, you're going to always tell the truth, right? No matter how many years, you might forget some details, but for the most part, the story's going to be the same. But like even how she became psychic, she's changed that story. Lorraine Warren changed that story like 5 different times over the years on different interviews. And when they talk about different cases, but see, back then, you couldn't search things on Google or YouTube. People just took it at
Yeah,
face value, and they would forget, okay, well, the Warrens gave an interview 2 years ago. Nobody's studying that. They're watching whatever interview they're giving now. So, but their son-in-law and some of the other people have definitely, gotten deep in with the fallacies and things of the Warrens to make money, unfortunately.
And
And
then what's his name? Zappos that has the
yeah, John
haunted
Zavis.
museum. Yeah, isn't he their nephew or something like that? I
Yeah,
may have
yeah,
that wrong.
yeah. He was Ed's sister's son, and he
Yeah,
seems to me to be the most credible one out of all of them
yeah.
that had anything to do with
Although
the
I have
movies.
heard some stuff about him too that
Yeah.
they would show up somewhere and whatever the priciest antique in the room was, it'd be like, "Oh, that's haunted. We need to take that with us." So I get it, but yeah, I've seen some of the shows and things that he's on. It's interesting. I'll give it that. But
Yeah, if anybody's interested in that, go look up Truth or Demons podcast because Stevie is actually talking to the people that knew them and doing the deep dive into their backgrounds and things. And her research is impeccable, and she's just putting the truth out there. She's not giving an opinion one way or the other. She's just telling you here these people are, and this is the proof that I have. Videos and interviews they've done and things like that. So she does a great job. But if you're interested in debunking the Warrens.
yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that one just for my own curiosity and some thoughts and ideas that I've had about him.
Yeah, yeah, it seemed like I said, I don't know. I think they started out with good intentions, like I said, but
Yeah,
also Ed Warren, his name's not even Ed Warren. It was Edward Miney or something like that, and so he changed his name. But also he had some dealings, kind of shady dealings when he was in the Navy and all that, where he got charged with some things and didn't seem like a good character from the get-go from what she's dug up of his past and stuff. So,
interesting. Now I'm
yeah.
really fascinated with it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to
Yeah.
go back and dig into that.
And she has more episodes coming out here soon. She's got one about the Enfield poltergeist case
Yeah,
with the Warrens. So
yeah. I don't remember their involvement in that one. What they did. I think they got to a point where everything was a demon when he
yeah,
declared himself a demonologist or an exorcist or whatever, and then
yeah,
everything they came across was demons. I'm looking at some of the other people that you had on here. You had my friend Heather Mosier
yeah,
on
yeah,
there. She's been on this show. She's a classics professor at Kent State in Ohio, and she's with Seth Breedlove in Small Town Monsters. And I was in one of their documentaries, The Skinwalkers, American Werewolves 2, is when I was living out in the high desert in New Mexico. They were out there filming, and they got me in there telling some stuff. Somebody said I looked like Russell Crowe. I don't know about that, but had a good time. And
yeah,
she's got some interesting stories and
yeah,
writing and things.
yeah. And I love the Small Town Monsters documentaries. And so she's kind of with Seth Breedlove, who's the main director and producer and owns Small Town Monsters and started all that. She's kind of the second driving force behind it. She's the one that does most of the research and she
Yeah,
co-produces most of the episodes and stuff. And she is just a wealth of knowledge and just awesome to talk to.
yeah. See if there's anybody else here. Her Lynn Monet, I've had her on a couple of
Yeah,
times. She's a good guest.
yeah, Lynn's awesome.
And
Yeah, her experience with and me coming from a medical background for 20 years, me and her just swapping stories about paranormal things that we've experienced in the medical field because she's been a nurse for a long time and for like the past I think 17 or 18 years she's been an end of life care nurse with hospice, and so
yeah,
just some of the things she's seen and experienced is pretty incredible.
and so you had good old Jim Harold on there about a month ago.
Yeah, I was surprised his publicist reached out to me. And I was like, "Who am I to have Jim Harold on?" He's like the Godfather of the original paranormal podcast.
Yeah,
And yeah, he had another book in his Campfire book series coming out, and his publicist said, "Hey, would you like to have him on?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to talk to him." And so yeah, I had a good time. Great guy, really nice
good
guy.
deal. Yeah, I've been on one of his shows or a couple of them. It's been a while. It's been a few years ago, but yeah, Jim's a nice guy, and
Yeah, and I actually gave him chills. So one of the stories that I told kind of hit home with him, and
that took some. I got to
yeah.
ask, what story gave Jim Harold chills? I mean, that's got to be something.
It was the story we were talking about. I had my dog Chase that we had to put down. We had him for 10 years, and he was a rescue. And when we rescued him, they were going to put him down because nobody would take him because he had some issues. And so I took him because I dealt with dog with issues before. And so we rehabbed him. He became a great dog, and we had him for he was 10 years old. We had him for 8 years. And when we put him down at the vet, we were upset, of course. And I told Roger, I was like, let's just go window shopping. Like, just to get our minds off of this and just get out and do something. And so we decided to go to this one store that has dog stuff. And it's not a dog store, but they have dog stuff. And I said, why don't we, our dog's gonna be missing their brother. Why don't we buy them some new toys, new bed, whatever. So looking at that, and then over the intercom, the lady up front at the gas register said, Chase, can you please come to the front? Chase to the front. And I thought, that is not a coincidence that we picked this one particular store at random, and our dog's name was Chase that we just had put down an hour ago. And so I took that as a sign that, he was telling us he was okay. And so I was telling that story to Jim. And then we got into talking about signs like that. And we were talking about people having coins fall, just, finding coins with certain dates on them. And I think I
Yeah,
just
I've had
picked
that happen myself.
Yeah, and for an example, I just picked an arbitrary date of 1976. Well, he got this look on his face, and he's like, "You just gave me the chills," because he said that his uncle, 2 days before me and him talked, he found a quarter in his house in the floor that had 1976 on it,
Wow.
and he was like, "Get out of my head." But it had something to do with his uncle too. It was his favorite uncle, and he had passed away, and the date was significant to his uncle too, I believe. But I've recorded a few shows since then and did a bunch of live streams, so I'm trying to remember the exact
Yeah,
story. But yeah, it was and he asked his daughter if she had any change. She's like, "Yeah, I got some, a few quarters," but he didn't even know where the quarter came from because he's like, nobody carries cash anymore.
yeah, I've had that happen before. When I lived in St. Helens, Oregon, I came out of the house one time, and my driveway was gated, and nobody had been there. I hadn't been in or out since the night before, and I didn't even have any change. And there on the sidewalk right outside the door was I think it was a dime. And I don't remember what the date was or if there was any significance to it, but just, I've had that happen before at another place I lived in Portland, Oregon. Um, I would hear sounded like somebody dropped a handful of pennies or something, and hear them rolling on had the original fir flooring in there, Douglas fir.
Yeah.
And but occasionally I would find a penny just sitting in the middle of the floor,
Wow.
and that's I don't know, apport or something. There's
Yeah.
something to do with coins from the
I,
other side.
I've had that happen to me, but not with a coin. 2 years ago, it was right after Halloween, and I'm diabetic, so we don't ever have candy in the house. And my husband, he hates candy corn. But I'm in the kitchen and I feel something hit me in the back, and I hear it hit the floor, and it's a piece of candy corn. I'm like, what? Where? And we have 8 dogs, so there's no food surviving on the floor at
Yeah.
all. They were all outside, and I'm like, where the hell does candy corn come from? And I holler at him, and he's back in the bedroom. I'm like, you gotta come see this. Like, I showed it to him on the floor. My mom, who passed away in 2009, loved candy corn. And so the only thing I can think is that, she somehow ported it and knew that would get my attention to know it was her. But I have no explanation for where the candy corn came from.
Interesting. Candy corn
Yeah.
from beyond.
Yeah.
I had a weird thing happen with regular corn, like seed corn. When I lived in St. Helens, I had a little area outside by my back fence where I had a little table set up and a chair, and I'd sit out there in the mornings and have my coffee and stuff. Went out there one morning, and again, the driveway's gated. The gate hadn't been open. I had security lights and perimeter alarms and cameras and all that. Nobody
Yeah.
had been in or out. But on top of this little table, there was 7 uh, kernels of seed corn, like you plant to grow corn.
Yeah.
No idea what that was about. I was gonna plant them, but and see what it but it might be some kind of weird corn, like a Jack and the
Right.
Beanstalk type thing. So I held on to them, but I put them in a little cellophane and kept them. But then I lost them in one of my many moves. I've moved a few times since then, or at least twice. So I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess a bird or a squirrel or something could have left it there, but it was weird because they left them on that table, and they were just sitting there. Just
Yeah.
I've got a picture of them somewhere. I'll see if I can find that. I'll send it to you. But what
Mhm.
does it mean? I don't know. Other than here's some corn
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Yeah, I had somebody tell me a story that happened to them one time. They were talking about finding coins, and it was always for them it was always dimes. And I don't remember what year it was, but it was a dime with a certain year on it. And she was on the aisle of a grocery store, and she just heard something hit the floor, and it was a dime with that date on it. And she went around to look to see if somebody threw it, over the aisle on both sides, and there was nobody else in the store there on those aisles anyway. And so she's just like, "Where did this dime come from?" Yeah, there's nobody
Right.
to throw it. Nobody's playing a prank.
And years ago, I used to do some coin shooting with a metal detector. I'd get out and see what I could find when I was living in East Tennessee. And more than one occasion, I would dig up an older coin, like a silver coin, but there would be a newer, more modern coin underneath the silver coin. Like
Oh, wow.
I remember one time I dug a silver quarter out of a hole. It was like a probably 50 something, and I always recheck the hole, before I filled it back in. The
Yeah.
detector went off again, and there was like a penny from the 90s that was down underneath the silver quarter. Now, how does that even happen? I mean, that doesn't
Right.
make any sense, but I had that happen several times. I don't know. That's another one of those just
Yeah.
little mysteries, and I love stuff like that because just imponderables, and that's, uh I've had problems, and I've been insomniac all my life, not so much anymore, but, that was the type of stuff that would rattle around in my head at night when I couldn't
Yeah.
sleep, was that, "How does that even happen?"
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fixing to, get on, doing the grounds of the night house with the metal detector. I've done a little bit, and we've done a little archaeological stuff, and we found some stuff.
Yeah, you might
Um,
find some good stuff there.
yeah, so under the summer kitchen floor, we found a bunch of, china shards, broken china, and, one of the patterns I found is from the '40s, but there's another pattern that is, like hand-painted gold rim, and it's hibiscus flowers. And or they could be Rose of Sharon, which is very similar that grow around here, but painted on this rim, that's from the 1800s. And so but that was interesting pulling all that out. And we found various other things on the property already as well, but I haven't had time to really metal detect. And so I'm
Yeah.
going to get out and do that. Hopefully I can find their trash pile. That's what I'm
Yeah, I
looking
was just gonna say that somewhere there's probably a garbage
for.
dump,
Yeah.
and you find some, old bottles and things, particularly with, history going back that far. There might be some interesting and rare bottles there if you can find where they did dump their trash.
Yeah. And there's also so Hopkinsville was traded back and forth between the Union and the Confederacy. They each occupied it 3 different times, I believe. And There the, Confederacy, when they were occupying Hawkinsville, they had 300 soldiers die in Hawkinsville of this plague, and doctors today still don't know what it was, but they called it black pox pneumonia, and it killed 300 of the Confederates when they were, like I said, stationed in Hopkinsville. Well, they used the basement of the Night House as one of the hospitals because Hopkinsville did not have a proper hospital. I think the nearest one was either Louisville or Nashville. And back then, that was a couple of days' ride. And so, and the Confederacy didn't have money, like the Union did to take care of their soldiers, really. So we also had soldiers camping on the property. So I'm hoping to find some buttons and things like that they left behind. Um, and there may be some of them buried on the property, but I think they buried them all in a mass grave in one of the cemeteries in town.
Yeah, interesting. Now, are there other B&Bs and things like that there that have, a haunted history to them that you know of? Is because there's all this other stuff going on in that area. I thought maybe there would be some other haunted places there.
I've heard of a few so far. Like I said, we've been new to Hopkinsville for the past 4 or 5 months. There's a house that's connected to our house. It was JB and Eliza Knight were the couple that bought the house in 1860. And Eliza, her original name was Brian, was her maiden name, her last name. And her sister married a guy named Crockett, and they built a house in town in 1835 called Lone Oak, and it's still standing. And I've talked to the gentleman that owns Lone Oak, and that house is very much haunted too. Um, he's had some teams come in there and investigate, and what they could figure out was there's a guy in the basement that is not allowed to come upstairs because there's a female spirit upstairs that does not like him, and she makes him stay in the basement. Is the story. So there's lots of things that happen
Yeah,
around Lone Oak.
interesting. There was a house in Oak Ridge that I knew of where there was male spirit in the basement that was angry, and then up in the attic there was a female spirit that was kind of shy and just stayed up there and hid because she didn't like the guy that was in the basement. As far as I know, she never came out of the attic and he never came out of the basement. So
Yeah.
interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the night house, what kind of encounters have you experienced there already?
So pretty much from day one. And when we met a lawyer's office to sign the paperwork, and the people we bought it from, husband and wife, they had already moved to California, and so the wife couldn't come because of work, and so the husband came and signed the paperwork, and we asked him about the paranormal stuff, and he got a look on his face like a lot of people do, and said he had never had any experiences, but the look on his face told me otherwise. But he said his wife had lots of experiences, and so then we were talking to the neighbor when we first moved in, first started going to the house and working on it, and the neighbor has lived there for like 20 something years, and apparently this guy's wife had come and told them that she was having almost daily experiences because she worked from home, and the neighbor next door, he won't fess up to any, but he won't go in the house either. So he said he definitely went to go in the basement. So day one, after we've talked to the owner, we get the keys, and it's about 4 o'clock in the evening, in April, the end of April, and we go over to the house, and my in-laws were there, and my husband's aunt was there with us. So there were 5 of us, and none of them had seen the house. And so we had only seen the house once, so we're exploring it too, even more because it's a weird house. Like I said, 6 levels, kind of a maze. And I went in the bathroom and shut the door, and I was doing my business, and somebody knocked on the door. It was one knock, and I washed my hands and came out, and they were across the house on the other side. There was nobody there. So that was the first thing that happened, and this sounded like knuckles, it's on a wood door, and so that kinda kicked it off, and, we started talking to them, because I think it's the previous owner scared his wife, so she didn't want nothing to do with him, but we started talking to him, telling him good morning and good night, and the more we do that, the more it's kind of ramped up. Now we've had all kinds of things happen. My Roger was coming out of the kitchen area into the dining room, and he was shutting the door because he's locking up for the night. He was shutting the door in between the two, and he heard 3 knocks on the door from the other side, the kitchen side, and he thought he had locked one of us in there. And he opens the door, and there's nobody there, but he can see out the window that me and my brother and my brother's girlfriend were out on the front lawn, and there was nobody else in the house. Um, his parents have been helping us work on the house because his dad's a contractor, and they've heard 2 people talking, a man and a woman, kind of off in the distance in the house, but you can't tell what they're saying. So even they've experienced stuff, but the house is very welcoming. Um, the latest thing going on, I've got some videos. I just started a YouTube channel for the Night House, and Night is spelled Knight, but on YouTube it's the Night House Hopkinsville, and I've got some of these videos up there. We put cameras throughout the house and on the outside for security reasons, not even necessarily for paranormal. And the camera that's up in the guest suite is kind of a living room area upstairs. There's a video of that has a white mist that set the camera off motion, and it alerted me, and so I captured the video. But it's this huge white mist that goes across in front of the camera, and I can't explain it. There's nothing in the house to do that. We've caught audio as well on some of the cameras. It sounds like furniture moving several times, and like somebody talking and then walking away. Here lately, the latest video that I've put up on the Facebook page, um, there are French doors. When you go up the stairs, there's a landing, and to go into the parlor, there are these French doors that have all these panes of glass in them, panes of clear glass. And we keep the French doors open to let the air circulate through the house. Well, they've been closing on their own, and so I had a camera on the mantle, but the doors were right outside of the view of the camera. So I said, "All right, well, the door, we keep coming in here, and one of the doors is closed on the right hand side." And I'm like, "I want to see why it's closing." And so I turned the camera toward the doors, and nothing happened. So I'm like, "Okay, well, I don't, the door's been closing by itself. I understand why nothing's happening now with the camera on it." So I moved the camera on the far end of the room where it could get both the doors and the whole room. So if anything else moves, well, they think they're funny because they moved the left-handed door, which is obscured by the right-handed door. So when I come in the next day, the left-handed door is closed, and but I did capture part of it on video, but it took it 2 hours to close. But also the crazy thing is on this landing to circulate air, we have a fan on a stand that blows into the parlor, and so those doors have to fight against that positive air pressure to close. Um, so they closed the left-hand door when we were up there last night, yesterday. The left-hand door closed, and then today I go up there, and the right-hand door is closed again. So they're messing with us by alternating closing these doors, and I don't have any explanation for it because, like I said, if it was just like the right-hand door, I could say, okay, maybe vibration or something. But when I started talking about filming the right-hand door, they decided to shut the left-hand door. So we'll see. I left the door closed when I left there today, and so I want to see if I told them they can go ahead and close the left-hand door too. I left the right-hand door closed, so we'll see. We'll see if they
Uh,
close the
and
left-hand door.
I was going to ask you about that. I'm glad that you've got cameras there. Now, will you have it set up at some point where people can go to a website and watch it live just to see if they see anything? Are you going to do that kind of thing as well occasionally? Or
Yeah, I've been looking into doing Twitch. There are people that live stream houses and even teams that live stream their investigations on Twitch for people to watch. And so I'm looking at. I got a friend who used to be a professional gamer on there, and so he knows the ins and outs of it and how to set it up. But yeah, I've been looking at doing that um, so that people can go in there and watch and pick out anything they see because there's only so much camera footage I can watch, and that's why I have it set up for motion sensor and
yeah,
sound because that's when I watch it. I don't just sit and watch, the live streams of them. But right now we have 4 cameras in the house and I need to put probably 4 or 5 more because like I said, the house is so many levels. I don't even know what's going on in the basement of the cellar.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. If you could set it up to where they could click on what camera they wanted to
yeah,
watch, or if it was just like a big like security camera view, where you can see all of them, and if you see
yeah.
something on one, you could click on that one and blow it up full screen, or go back and forth. There's a lot of possibilities there, I think.
Yeah, I think it would be cool. Especially because like I said, I don't know how much stuff I'm missing. So the doors closing haven't because they take 2 hours to close. They haven't set off the motion of the camera.
Because they're closing
Um,
so slowly.
yeah,
They're like the
yeah,
spirits know if we do it very slow, the
yeah,
cameras won't catch it.
yeah,
Now, you said that you've been working on stuff and redoing stuff. I've heard of a lot of places where if there's any type of rehab, renovation, or anything going on, that will stir up whatever's in
yeah,
there. So that
yeah.
might account for some of the things that you're experiencing.
Yeah, I think there are from what I've seen so far, and we haven't had a whole lot of investigating done. I've done a couple of small investigations, and they're friends. Like I said, we're gonna have teams come in and do full investigation in September, and I'll probably do a full investigation here soon. But um, from what I've seen so far, I believe there are 2 intelligent spirits there that are there all the time. Um, because, like I said, there's stuff happening all the time in the house. Just and also, we had a friends and family day a couple weekends ago where all our friends and family that wanted to see the house came and we had a private party and potluck and grilled out and stuff. And Stevie from Truth or Demons podcast, I'd never met her in person before, but she lives in the same area I do. And so she came because she wanted to see the house. And her friend actually saw somebody in the upstairs window. Um, and they ran in the house to see if anybody was in there. There was nobody in the house. Everybody was outside, and they didn't find anybody upstairs. And there's only one way downstairs. So, um, just about. I mean, we've had a lot of people who've experienced stuff and heard things
Yeah.
um, and things like that. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. I've seen one full body apparition so far, and I believe it was Eliza Knight, and I don't know why I think that, but that's just what I feel. I was in the foyer on the ground floor where you come in where the big columns are, and I was locking up and I was turning lights on and up in the thermostat, and up on the stair landing where you go because you got to go upstairs to go into the parlor where I was talking about the doors are. Up on that landing, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a white woman with a bun, and she had a white like linen top on with a like lace neck, and she had a big dress on. And I saw her very briefly out of the corner of my eye. And as soon as I looked over there, she poof disappeared. And I said, okay, hey, nice to see you, and
Yeah.
locked up and left. But, I've been doing this for over 20 years. So it's not,
Yeah,
they're not
it
anything
kind of
threatening.
becomes kind of a de rigueur, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
not as frightening, and I'm the same way. So I'm guessing you don't have any qualms about spending the night in there then?
No, no, I spent the night up there, I mean, quite a few times now, and I had one issue one night, and I was like, "Come on, I'm trying to sleep." The first night that we investigated up there, my buddy Austin that I do documentary stuff, films with, um, he was there, and it was just me and him. He was in one bedroom, and I was in the other, and they're connected by a set of French doors with glass in them, and the doors were closed, and, I woke up about 4 o'clock in the morning, and we had only been asleep maybe an hour and a half. It was between 4 and 5 in the morning, and we had investigated for a while, and, I woke up to what sounded like a door slamming, and then it sounded like somebody's moving stuff around in the room, and I was just like, "Look, we've been investigating." Just at first, I thought it was Austin maybe, slammed the bathroom door or something because it's right next to the bedrooms, but he was asleep, there was nobody in the bathroom, and, so I was just like, "Look, we're investigating. I'm going back to sleep. Leave me alone. Like, if you wanna move furniture, mill about, make noise, go somewhere else in the house. The house is big enough for all of us." But no, I got used to sleeping in haunted locations a long time ago. Um, I've probably spent 10 weekends at the Thomas House in Red Bowling Springs, and there's one particular room I really like to stay in because the bed's really comfortable. And, every time I stay up there, they wanna mess with me before I go to bed or in the middle of the night, and I'm just like, I'm so over it. I'm just like, "We've been investigating. If you wanna do all this, you should have done this while we're investigating for 8 hours." Um, so yeah, I'm not, and like I said, the house is really welcoming anyway. It just has a welcoming energy, and nobody has been creeped out, so far. Most people will come in and be like, "Can I explore?" And they go off on their own without any kind of fear whatsoever. So, yeah, nothing negative at all.
Yeah,
I
well,
think,
that's good.
I think they want their story told, and I think they're happy that somebody's paying attention to them.
Yeah. Now, I gotta ask you, are there any hidden passageways or anything like that? There was some old houses, some old Victorian houses there in Knoxville, where some of my there's a family of one of my relatives, like my cousin's husband's family, had like a secret staircase in the back of a closet. And then when I lived in Vegas, there was a bookcase at the bottom of the stairs that opened up into a little room. Anything like that? Make any cool discoveries, like a little hidey hole or a bolt hole or anything?
So there's a few things. There are rumors that there are 2 tunnels, on the property. We've also heard rumors that it was part of the Underground Railroad.
Yeah, I was
So
going to ask you about any Underground Railroad connection. A lot of those places are haunted.
yeah, so, there is rumor that one tunnel goes from the summer kitchen out to this, there's a weird, we have 2 barns at the end of the driveway. We have this little red barn, and they're attached on one wall. Little red barn, and then, like, a wooden carport that was built probably in the '50s or '60s. And, the red barn, the floor is caved in. Well, there's an 8-foot tall cellar, stacked stone cellar under this red barn that we can't figure out what it was there for. And, when I went down there to investigate, it's all stacked rectangular stones, and most of them are 2 or 3 feet long. They're huge, but there's one stone that doesn't belong. That just, when you look at it, you're just like, it doesn't belong. It's perfectly flat, and it's perfectly square, and it looks like it was put there to seal up a tunnel. That's what it looks like. It's like 2 foot by 2 foot. It's seriously, that's what it looks like, and
So
and
you
I can
got
get my fingers
plans
behind the edge.
to dig that out of there and see what's behind there? That'd be my first thought.
Well, what we're gonna do first is I got a friend who does ground penetrating radar, and he's with the Sims County Historical Society in Franklin, Kentucky. And we're gonna have him come out here soon and do the GPR to see if there's a caved in tunnel there or if there's a void there. I don't want to tear up this foundation of this original structure if I don't have to. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Um, but I don't know why they would have a big, like I said, most of these stacked stones for the foundation are maybe a foot thick at most, and 2 or 3 feet long. I don't know why they just have one cube shaped rock in this whole foundation of this. So then that supposedly either goes to the basement or to the cellar in the house or goes to the summer kitchen. Well, on the other side of the house, going down toward the road in a line, there are 2 giant sinkholes. I'm talking, you could climb down in these sinkholes. They're huge, and they've been filled in with rock and stuff. But when I asked the neighbor next door, uh, you know, where the sinkholes come from, if he knew, he said they were slave holes. And I said, "What do you mean by slave holes?" He said, "Oh, it's part of the Underground Railroad, and the tunnel came out on the other side of the road." And
That
so
would
I was
kind
like,
of stand to reason. Yeah.
"Yeah, yeah." So, unfortunately, down in the cellar, the previous owner, he had to shore up the foundation. So the cellar, he Brico blocked up where it was just dirt walls before. He put Brico blocks in there and put sealer on there and stuff to keep the water out, and to rehab the foundation. And so if there was any indication of tunnels behind that stuff, we don't know. And unfortunately, he will not answer me on Facebook, to ask questions or anything. So I know he's seen my message on Facebook Messenger, but he won't message me back. So I don't know what that's all about. I guess he's sore about selling the house or what. I don't know. But yeah, so if he found any tunnels, he never told us anything about them. So our best bet is to have the ground penetrating radar come out and see if we can find, like I said, caved in or still existing tunnels. They very well could be still existing, because in that part of Kentucky, bedrock, which is sandstone, is very close to the surface, in places. So if they had to, dig these tunnels out of sandstone, then they very well could still be there.
Yeah. And I'm interested as to what, if anything's in there. I look forward to the GPR results there, and that's
Yeah,
how much you might find.
yeah. As far as in the house, we know we're going to uncover it. We know that there's a fireplace that's gotten covered up over the years. They bricked it in, mortared it over, and then put drywall over it. And so we figured that out because the chimney was just too big to only service one fireplace in the house. And so we went poking holes in walls, and we have a um, little snake camera that we put in there, and we're pretty sure that they walled up this fireplace. And there's also just a random mantle in the basement that doesn't. I mean, all the fireplaces have mantles, so there's a random mantle in the basement that at least we have. It's original house that we have to put back on
Fair.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all the secretive stuff so far that we found.
Yeah. Now,
Um,
what about as far as any mementos, keepsakes, historical things? You talked about finding some uh, dish shards and things like that. Have you
yeah.
found any old newspapers or uh, Christmas cards, kids' drawings, anything like that? Have you found anything that's with some history to it, you think?
Well, what came with the house is the holy grail of a historic house or historic site.
Uh,
We have two books full of hundreds of original documents from the Knight family.
oh, wow.
Yeah, two full albums that I'm working on scanning the computer and digitizing. They are in amazing shape. It's all handwritten. It was all handwritten with the probably a quill and ink.
Yeah.
Um, the beautiful calligraphy, handwriting, cursive handwriting. But JB Knight was a lawyer, but the way they made their money was he was a real estate mogul, and he owned thousands of acres spanning across multiple states, and he owned lots and lots of real estate, lots of houses and things around Kentucky, even up in Chicago. The Great Fire of Chicago in 1871, he actually had a 3-story building that he owned burned down. That was a tenant building that he rented rooms out. So, and far we can figure, he was worth $10 million back in the 1860s, and that's equivalent to about $500 million today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think there may be possibility of any hidden money anywhere, gold coins or
Well,
stocks, bonds, certificates, something that could be a tangible asset.
I'm hoping with the going and doing the metal detecting that I'll find some of that stuff, because the last the last children to live in the house of the Knights, their names are Charlie and Ida. Neither one of them were ever married. They never had kids. They're brother and sister, and they both lived in the house till they died. And Ida didn't die until 1939, and Charlie died in 1928. And they still had money, um, but they were very private. And from all reports, especially in their later years, they never left the house. So there very well may be
And
mason
sounds like they
jars.
lived through the Depression, so, yeah, they may
Yeah,
have, yeah, that's what I was thinking, a mason jar full of gold coins, and I've heard of stuff like that on property where things maybe that's what's behind your stone square down there, who
yeah,
knows?
yeah. Yeah, it could be, and that outdoor cellar, which is odd. I've talked to the town historian, the county historian, and talked to a couple other historians, and they don't have any clue what that outdoor cellar was for. It has about 2 foot of mud in the bottom of it until there's a stone floor, and so I'm looking forward. We made one of those archaeological screens where they screen the dirt through,
Yeah.
and we're gonna scoop that mud out of there and do like a bucket brigade because, like I said, I mean, it's a good 8 foot deep. Once we get that 2 foot of mud out of there, right now it's 5 or 6 feet deep. So we're gonna screen all that mud and see what we can find. Just laying on top of it, I found a spool that would go on a spinning wheel to make yarn.
Ah,
But this one has a bunch of grooves in it, so it would have been used to make lace. The way they would weave the different patterns and stuff, they would move the threads from one little groove to the next. Um, we've so far we found all kinds of stuff. We found a double yoke, which is the thing that goes on, mules' necks and stuff to pull plows and things like
yeah.
that. It's a wooden yoke, and it's small, so it would have been for mules, for 2 mules, a team of mules. And we found that buried in the ground under the shed, kind of rotting. And I pulled it out and put it in the sun, let it dry out, and it stopped. Um, we have found a 2 foot long spike that was hand wrought. It's square, and it goes down to a needle point. And we found that in the wall, and that would have been to hold two of the corner timbers together. And it's about 2 foot long. We found various square nails, handmade nails. Um, we found some doorknobs that are very interesting history with those. They're made out of clay, but they look like swirling wood,
Huh.
and they would have been very
Interesting.
expensive. Yeah, very expensive back in the 1860s. But they're brown, and but it was this process that was invented in 1849 by this blacksmith in Bennington, Vermont. So they're called Bennington clay doorknobs,
Yeah.
and they look like two different browns swirling, almost like if you took a gnarled wood and made it into a doorknob. And so we found those, and we put those back in the house. We found some other locks and things.
Yeah,
Um,
I was gonna ask you about that if you found some of the original hardware and things. And does it have like the crown moldings and the baseboards and tin ceilings, pressed tin, anything like that?
so none of the tin ceilings, and like I said, the house has been gone through renovations over the years. As far as the baseboards in the parlor, the baseboards are 2 foot tall,
Wow.
to show opulence, and all the ceilings are 10 foot tall. So all of the moldings are at least a foot wide, one by 12. Um, and but yeah, the up in the parlor, it's 2 foot tall, stacked, just different profiles of molding that's stacked up to make this fancy looking molding. It's pretty neat. Um, the house was changed from the Federalist style to the Greek Revival, like I was saying, with the columns and things on the side, and they changed the mantles of the fireplaces too. So the only original mantle from when the house was originally built is in the master bedroom, and it's a little more fancy than the other ones. The other ones just look like columns, basically, with a base and stuff. They're just kind of plain mantles. But the historian believes that the one that's in the bedroom probably would have originally been in the parlor because they would have had the fancier stuff in the parlor to show off, that they were rich. And the um, the hardwood floors on the second and third floor and in the attic are the original shiplap wood. So the original wood floors are in part of the house. The only reason they're not on the ground floor is because when the Rogers family bought the house, the floors were almost sitting on the ground, so the wood was kind of rotting. So they had to put in new hardwood back in the 50s. So, but yeah, the original flooring is throughout a lot of the house as well. It's just an interesting house all around. And like I said, every time we're there, we experience something paranormal, unexplainable. I've seen things out on the property at night too, shadow figures. And I saw one of the weirdest things I've ever seen that I've never seen before. I was sitting about 3 o'clock in the morning. We were spending the night up there with 2 or 3 friends, and I was sitting on the side porch, the side portico, and I was looking out toward the sheds and toward like the back of the property where it's kind of woodsy. And I saw what looked like the only way I can describe it is it's like a 2 or 3 inch flame off of like a oil lamp, and it just appeared and went about 20 feet from left to right, and then just disappeared. And it looked like a flame. So
Oh wow, that's kind of creepy.
yeah, and it was a bit too tall to be a candle. So I would liken it more to, like an old oil lamp, because you could turn those wicks up and make the flame as high as you want. And then the other day we were standing out front, and I was talking to Roger's mom. We were talking about the house and things, and we're standing out front, and the front porch, there's a window under the front porch, so you can actually walk under the front porch, and it has these big stone columns that hold it up in the front. And all of a sudden, in the middle of our conversation, she walks around the big staircase to the other side and come back around. I'm like, what are you doing? We were just talking. And she said, I just saw somebody walk on the other side under the staircase. I saw them go by. And she walked around there. There was nobody around there. And that was in the middle of the day.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, and his parents, my in-laws, are not paranormal people. They don't watch paranormal shows. They couldn't care less about it, So, they're very credible when they see something, or especially when they notice something like that. So,
attention all Ground Zero fans. Aftermath.media is celebrating our 4-year anniversary with a spectacular deal just for you. Wow! For a limited time, you can get an Aftermath premium yearly subscription for only $79. That's right, just $79 for a full year of exclusive content, ad-free listening, and premium features. Dive into a world of incredible stories, top-tier journalism, and the best in entertainment. Whether you're a longtime listener or new to Ground Zero, this is the perfect time to join the Aftermath family. Don't miss out on this amazing anniversary special. Visit Aftermath.media today and sign up for your Aftermath premium yearly subscription at just $79. But hurry, this offer won't last long. Celebrate with us and elevate your media experience to the next level. Aftermath.media, the ultimate resource for parapolitical and paranormal fans. Visit Aftermath.media and subscribe today. That's Aftermath.media.
That's Lee G, the calm before the storm, bringing us out of the break here on Everything Out There, talking with Eric Freeman Sims from the Unseen Paranormal Podcast and the Haunted Night House. Thanks again for being here with us, Eric. I'm loving all these stories about the Night House there, and I'm anxious to see what all you guys do with that. And also, this Monday night, you're going to be on with Cisco and I over on her channel.
Yeah.
Journey to the Gate Paranormal Portal Podcast. We're going to be talking about the house over there, or
Yeah, and a little bit of everything, I guess.
yeah.
Like
Actually,
we always
though,
do.
I'm doing these a week ahead because of the baby, so this episode won't air until next Sunday after we've already been off Cisco. So we're in the future. We're talking to the people in the past now, something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So go check out the show we did with Cisco a week ago.
yeah. If you didn't see it, go watch it, and I'll reference this show that you'll be able to listen to the Sunday after we're on Cisco on Monday. I'm sure I've confused everybody now. I was now. You said you have got a website for the Night House, and I'll put the links to everything in the description. Okay, yeah, I see it. The Night House, ky.com.
Yeah.
Looks
And
like
we got a Facebook page and a YouTube page.
Okay, I'll put links to all that in the show notes. And you've got another YouTube channel that you're doing. Is that, am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, we got so I started documentary style investigations with my friend Austin Lawrence, and it's called Strangely Haunted. And we've got a couple of short documentaries up there right now. We're working on some longer form stuff that'll be out later on this year, one of them, and then we got some more stuff we're working on, long form documentaries for next year. And a lot of fun investigating with Austin, and it's no BS investigating. So none of the flashy stuff you see on TV. We're just straight investigating, and we catch what we catch. And if we don't catch anything, we won't catch anything. It's kind of, I've always looked at investigating over the 20 years I've done it, that sometimes it's about the journey, not necessarily the destination. And the fact that we get to go to really cool historic places and go behind the scenes that normal people don't necessarily get to go to. And we've gotten to do a lot of that over the years. I've gotten to do a lot of that, even going on vacation. Always work something paranormal, special paranormal in. But
yeah, I've done that in the past. I used to have Weird America by Jim Brandon from his post in 1978, and it was kind of a roadmap, a guide to Weird America, strange places in the U.S. And anytime I had to go anywhere, I would had that with me. That was like my Bible as a teenager. And if there was anything nearby, even if I had to drive out of the way a little bit, I would make sure that I stopped by there and saw, a lot of weird stuff thanks to that little book. That was a very influential book, almost impossible to find now, long out of print. And I've seen copies of it go for hundreds of dollars easily. And I've even seen some priced at a couple of thousand. I don't know if they sold them or not, but at one time I had a couple copies of it. I wish I had them now.
Yeah, my buddy Alan Searcy, he's a paranormal author, and that's how he got started, was doing he developed an app for haunted hotels, and then he developed some apps for other haunted places around some big cities. And then he got into being a paranormal author. But and now he writes about different states and different cities as well. But yeah, he started off doing that paranormal roadmap stuff where you could just go on your phone, and it was like, Google Maps, but it had all the different haunted places. And
that's cool. There's a website that I go to and look like only in your state or something. Now it's not just paranormal stuff, but they have a lot there. But actually, that's a nice segue into something I wanted to ask you about. You've got an episode with Sylvia Schultz about haunted zoos, museums, and amusement parks. I know that she's written the books on that, and that's her deal. I may try to get her on as a guest. But what can you tell us about that episode? I love that topic, the idea of that there are a place like those museums and amusement parks that are haunted. When I lived in Portland, Oaks Amusement Park, right there on the Willamette River, and right behind the Wilhelm's Portland Memorial Mausoleum, the biggest mausoleum of the West Coast, or was. There's an amusement park right there, and it's haunted. They've seen, kids dressed in like 60s and 70s clothing and stuff in there.
Yeah.
What did you delve into with her about those haunted locations?
So the biggest interesting thing about Sylvia, I've had her on a couple of times. Whenever she writes one of her books, and she's got many books, and she's been an author for many years. Whenever she writes a book like this, she goes to the majority of the places. So she wrote about I forget the name of the museum in England, but she wrote about a couple of things that were in that museum that were haunted objects, and one of them was a bed, and I forget what the other one is. But she actually went to the museum and saw these objects, and that's like a lot of the haunted amusement parks and zoos and stuff. She actually went to, and has actually seen the area. So that's kind of cool, and I know that's hard for most authors to do, but so she's been to a lot of the places and met some of the people that are in the stories and things. But I saw her book. I had her on talking about a few years ago as a Christmas episode because she has a book out talking about how Christmas is more haunted and spiritual than Halloween because of Victorian. You got
Yeah,
crown legends and things.
and Charles Dickens, the greatest Christmas story ever is a ghost story with several ghosts in it.
Yeah, and so she's a great storyteller, great guest. And so when I saw that book out, I was like, I've never had anybody talk about these things, and you really don't think about when you go to a zoo or a amusement park, especially. You really don't think about them being haunted. And the thing is that the zoos, they're not just haunted by people; they're animal
Haunted by
ghost
animals.
stories. Yeah,
It's like the old LA zoo that's abandoned. There's stories of ghost animals in there. It's out in what part of town is that? I can't remember. I've been there, but yeah, there's empty cages and enclosures and things there. There hadn't been any animals in there in a long, long time, but they still hear them and still see them there sometimes. And that's I think that's out in the La Brea area. I don't know. It's been a while since I've been to LA, but that one springs to mind. I said the Oaks Amusement Park there in Portland, and then out in the river there, the Columbia River, they had Jansen Beach, and they used to have a big carousel out there that was haunted. Um, there was, I think, some kids that were injured or killed on it or something, and their ghosts supposedly haunted. So it's out there, and I've got a story in Strange Things in the Woods where a guy came across a part of an old merry-go-round out in the woods that seemed to have something attached to it. So it's there, and it's. I've watched some of these videos of abandoned. I think it's the Six Flags in Louisiana or wherever that Katrina wiped out,
yeah,
and they
yeah.
never restored that. I've heard stories and things there, and then seen those videos from Chernobyl, where all those people left, and then there's still little amusement parks and things there. Scary to think
Yeah.
about stuff like that, but it's out there. I mean, if anything can be haunted, schools and department stores, and there's a Fred Meyer on Hawthorne Boulevard in Portland that's on a haunted grocery store. That's been other things, but I think maybe haunted malls. I was watching some video about a guy he was in exploring an abandoned mall somewhere, had snuck in, and he heard somebody else in there, but he was the only one there. So I don't know.
Wow.
It's fun to think about.
Yeah, in Nashville, there's a famous haunted mall story. The Green Hills Mall, and the Green Hills part of Nashville is like the old money, the old rich people, and so the Green Hills Mall is very fancy. They have all Louis Vuitton and all those expensive stores in there. But in the, I believe it's the Dillards that's in there, is famously haunted by a Revolutionary War soldier, and he's been seen in the dressing rooms. They make him mad. He'll throw purses off of the counter and stuff, off the shelves. One of the employees, I saw her story firsthand that somebody got from her. She quit there because she was closing one night and went back to check the dressing rooms, make sure nobody was back there. And it's the type of dressing room, it's kind of like a bathroom stall where you see under the door. And she saw two like men's legs standing there, and she kept saying, "Sir, you need to come out. We're closed. You need to come out of the dressing room." And she opened the door and came face to face with this revolutionary soldier, and he just faded right in front of her, and she walked out and quit right then and there. But as far as like Sylvia Schultz episode, actually, you and Cisco came up in that episode, and because
something good, I hope.
yeah, definitely good. Because we're talking about museums, right? And so she has the Titanic Museum in Reno and the one in Las Vegas in there. And a couple of years ago, if you remember, famously, y'all were live streaming, and we were in the chat when the ice wall broke off at the one in Gatlinburg and hurt 5 people. And And I was telling her about that it would, the coincidence of us talking about the curse of you and Cisco were talking about the curse of the Titanic, and all of us were in the chat, and how it happened at the exact same time, talking about the
Yeah,
curse of the
that
Titanic.
was very, very strange.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, she found that fascinating. And, also I told her that there are lots of ghost stories at the one in Gatlinburg. Ghost Hunt Weekends goes out there and does investigations quite a few times a year in that Titanic museum. But yeah, you and Cisco came up because of that live stream and that paranormal coincidence, if you want to call it that, synchronicity.
Yeah. Yeah. And strange stuff. And
Yeah.
I know we're skipping around here a bunch, but I wanted to ask. I had Michael Laciana on
Yeah.
not too long ago, and he has some of the best EVPs I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
Have you ever captured any EVPs there at the Night House, or yet? I should say.
The stuff on the cameras, setting off the cameras, I've captured a few interesting things. The one video, the one time the camera went off in the master bedroom, the camera was on the mantle, and it sounds like, I mean, for 2 or 3 straight minutes, it sounds like somebody's moving furniture. And then you kind of hear, it sounds like a guy mumbling, and then somebody walking away. And there was nobody in the house when this got recorded. Just about a week ago, I got the sound sensor went off again on that same camera in that bedroom, and I've moved the camera since. But it sounded like a parrot squawking and whistling. And
Now that's something.
yeah, and I
A
had
ghost of a parrot. And I'm sure that happens.
yeah,
You hear about like Andrew
yeah,
Jackson, who famously his parrot was turning the air blue at his funeral. But
yeah.
you wonder if those things stay around and if they still talk in the afterlife. It's fascinating. I'll have to look into that.
Well, the correlation behind that too is it's not just a random thing. I actually, when we first bought the house, I've had people message me all different kinds of things, asking all different kinds of questions on Facebook Messenger. And I had somebody message me and ask if we had come across a ghost parrot, because the Rogers family that lived there up in 2014 apparently had a parrot for a long time. And I think it was a macaw, and they lived like 80 years. So they had that bird for a long, long time. And they lived in the house from the early 50s into 2014. That family did. So there is cause for a parrot to be there, a ghost parrot. So
Yeah, that reminds me over near it's on the way to Jamestown. I don't know. It might be in Armathwaite or Grimsley or one of those places. There was people that had they had a store or something there. But anyway, they had a parrot and they had a son, and his name was Wendell, and he got killed in a car accident or something. And the parrot would yell for him. It would call for Wendell, and it was upsetting his mom. You know, she'd lost her child. He was an adult, but
yeah.
still her child. And they gave the parrot away to somebody like and took it to another state. But they said years after that, the parrot had passed away. They would still hear the parrot calling for Wendell in the house,
Wow.
even though Wendell and the parrot were long since gone. So that happens. But that's
Yeah.
interesting. Ghostly
Um,
parrots, love it.
yeah. I came across researching my book at I can't remember exactly. It's been a while since I did the research and wrote this chapter, but in West Tennessee, there's a plantation house, and the summer kitchen, they had a enslaved lady who cooked for them for many years, but she had a macaw, a red macaw parrot, and it stayed in the summer kitchen with her. And to this day, people claim to see the bird through the window. And macaws are huge. I mean, they're 2 or 3 feet tall, and the red ones are bright red, and they still hear him. They still hear the parrot in the summer kitchen at that plantation.
Wow, that's strange. And I think that now I have heard of ghostly dogs and
Yeah,
kittens. I've had several encounters with and heard stories of ghost kittens. Had a story. It's in my Strange World, my autobiographical. Some of my paranormal experiences about some ghost kittens in the crawl space of a house that I grew up in. But I think they survived. Now I haven't heard, certain. I haven't heard of a ghost turtle or anything like that, but I'm
right,
sure it
right.
could exist, or a ghost rabbit, or although I did hear a strange story about Rockwood Mountain there in East Tennessee. The guy was up there and some kind of haunted area up there. And anyway, there was a chain that was going in a hole in the ground, and he pulled it, and a snow white rabbit came up out of the hole, and it scared him, and he got out of there. So I don't know, maybe there are ghost rabbits. And I was at a friend's funeral in Mountain City, Tennessee. This is back in the 90s, and just as they were lowering them into the ground and closing the service there, just a regular rabbit, a cottontail rabbit, came out of the edge of the woods and hopped right up to the grave and looked down in the grave and just sat there. So I thought,
Wow.
that's kind of strange. A rabbit was paying
Yeah.
his respects, or who knows. But I think animals are tuned in to a degree.
Yeah.
Certain ones, especially pets and things like that. I think there's a connection there.
Going back to Sylvia Schultz, a story that she told on the show that she put in her book, the museum park and zoo book. There was a family of 4. It was mom, dad, and daughter and son, and they were hiking in the woods in a park. And I don't remember. She gives details because these people actually they do exist, and she has the research to prove it. But anyway, they're hiking in a park, and they come upon this snake, and it was like a boa constrictor, and so they knew it was somebody's pet that had gotten out. Right? They knew it wasn't dangerous or anything. Well, they went right up and picked the snake up. The snake was nice. They all held the snake, and they wanted to get a picture with it because they just found it in the wild, And the mom took a picture of it back when it was regular pictures, not digital like we have now. And they put the snake down and went on about their business. She went and got the film developed, and whenever they looked at the pictures, there was no snake. It looked like they were holding a snake, but the snake was not there in the pictures. So, did they hold a ghost snake?
Wow, that's creepy. Now, I had a similar thing that I'd heard about. I went to the Bell Witch Cave down in Adams, Tennessee, and after
Yeah.
the tour was over, Chris Kirby, her husband owned that property. She's a friend of mine, and she was showing me some couple of photo albums that she had of pictures there. And one there was 2 little girls just right outside the entrance to the Bell Witch Cave. And one little girl has a snake around her neck. It looks like a boa or something, that. And the both little girls are smiling, and one little girl, a dark-haired little girl, has her arm around the blonde-haired little girl. And she said, "You see that picture there?" And yeah, she said, "That's my daughter, the dark-haired one, and that's her friend from school." But she said, "That snake, we don't know what that is, where it came from." She said, "My daughter is absolutely terrified of snakes, and she would not have sat there with a snake around her neck and a smile on her face." She said the snake was not there when I took the picture. And I
Wow.
think it was a Polaroid, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly. That was back in the 90s. But there's this little girl sitting outside the Bell Witch Cave with her friend, big smiles, and a snake draped over her shoulders. That's beyond creepy.
Yeah. I've had Candy on my show. I had Pat Fitzhugh on, which is he's kind of the expert on the Bell Witch
Yeah,
legend.
he's written, I think, the ultimate
Yeah.
books on the
Yeah.
Bell Witch Cave. I met Pat before when they had a Bell Witch get together. I think that was back
Yeah.
in the 90s too.
Yeah, I've known Pat for quite a few years now, and when he was on my show a while back, he got Candy to come on, which is the daughter,
Yeah.
and she runs the tours now, and so she came on and told some of the ghost stories, and also we talked about people bringing rocks back
Yeah.
and things to be taken out of the cave because they've had
Yeah, Chris said sometimes, they'd be gone, the gate would be closed, and they come back and said there's
Yeah.
a rock laying there with a note tied to it. So please put this back in the cave. I took it and I've had nothing but bad luck. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and she was telling us that when they opened back up after COVID, apparently the spirits missed them or something because she said it's been off the chain ever since. So
But
that's
I got some strange pictures down there. That was the first digital camera, professional style digital camera that I ever had. I had that with me. And I made some pictures down there. We were sitting, she had like a little picnic table or maybe a gazebo or something. And we sat up there, and she went and got she had some little booklets and things that she sold. This was before she had the gift shop. And I'm sitting there reviewing my pictures, and there was one, it looked like it was in kind of in shadow, but it was a 2x4 looking thing, black at an angle. And she's like, "I don't know what that is. There is nothing down there like that." And she knew the area where I took the picture. Sure enough, we walked
Yeah.
back down there, and she shined light. There was nothing like what showed up in the picture. So I
Wow.
don't know. There's a strange energy there, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they're open for paranormal investigations now. If anybody wants to go, they do one a month
Yeah,
out there.
I'd love to go back and do an investigation.
Yeah.
And there's stories not just in the cave, but on the property there where they had the light come down in a tree or something like that, set up in the
Yeah.
tree and was bright as the moon or something. I don't know. That whole place is kind of strange.
Yeah, Leanne and Todd Eskew from Black Wolf Paranormal, they run the investigations out there, and I've known them for years, and quite a few years now. And they put up pictures because, like I said, they run the investigations, and actually, even the Bell Cabin recreation that they have out there, because
Yeah,
the original is long gone.
that's new. I haven't
Yeah.
seen that, but I've seen pictures of it. It looks awesome.
Well, they've gotten from people coming to the investigation, taking pictures of the cabin. They've got one picture of a guy, a transparent guy, standing in the doorway, and he's in, I think, two of the pictures, but not the one at the beginning and one at the end. And then this past Saturday, I was supposed to be a guest investigator, but I have done something to my shoulder. I don't know if I torn the rotator cuff or what, but anyway, I didn't go, and they had plenty of investigators. But anyway, somebody else caught a shadow. Doesn't look like it's a black shadow blocking out light in one of the doors of the windows of the cabin. And two of my friends were guest investigators last Saturday, and they said they heard out loud disembodied voices, and everybody in their group of 6 people that they were leading the investigation heard the voices too, and they caught them on recorder in the cave. So lots of activity out there for sure.
Yeah.
And when they investigate up around the recreated cabin. They investigate in the cave, and then on top of the cave, there's actual Indian burial mounds that they investigate as well. And so,
Yeah.
lots of stories coming out of there for sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting place. Like I said,
Yeah.
it's been a long time since I've been there, but I enjoyed any time spent there. Just that whole area has a spooky feel, but yet comforting. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody other than myself or not. It has a
Yeah.
familial feel to it, but it is creepy there.
Yeah. There's kind of a, I don't want to call it a triangle, because Adams is not far where the Bell Witch Cave is, not far from Hopkinsville. And then about 20 minutes from Hopkinsville, you have Lamtuna Lakes,
Yeah.
which is the Dogmen stuff out there and
Yeah, and
those
I
stuff.
saw you had a video about that. What's your take on what's going on there? Now, I was supposed to go there a couple years ago when Josh Turner was having the first North American Dogman
Yeah.
convention, but my driver got COVID and I had to cancel. But it was in Paris, Tennessee, and
Yeah.
I learned I'd went prior to that. I'd gone to a UFO conference and spoke in San Francisco, and that was where I learned not to stay at the venue because I didn't see a moment. And no shade on anybody, but I couldn't get out of my room. People were wanting, selfies or sign this or tell me this story, that story. And,
Yeah.
I enjoy meeting people, but sometimes I need a break. So
Right.
when I was going to speak at that conference, even though it was in Paris, Tennessee, I'd actually booked a little hunting or fishing cabin right in the middle of LBL, and I was going to just drive up there, but
Yeah.
didn't get to go. But I was kind of looking forward to being in that area. I've had a few weeks ago, Cisco had I think the kid's name is Elijah Henderson. A kid, I mean,
Yeah.
he's younger than I am, but he and his
Yeah.
sister Gabby were on, and they live in I think it's Indian Mound, Tennessee, which is just right there
Yeah.
on the border. And they were talking about that. What's your take on this goings on there at LBL?
It's definitely interesting. I had a guy named Steve Causey on not so long ago, and he wrote a book called The LBL Massacre. And supposedly back in the 80s, there was a family that was massacred by some sort of animal, and it was covered up by the local police and
Now, is
the
that the one
government.
where they supposedly found the little girl up in the tree that had been
Yeah.
disemboweled or something? I've heard all kinds of different stories. I don't know what's
Yeah.
what.
It's become the telephone game now, but there were some pretty credible witnesses that came out. Especially the main witness was a lady who worked the graveyard shift at a local gas station, and it was the only gas station like in that area around Katie's, I think. And I don't know if it was Katie's or Dover. I don't know if it was the Kentucky side or Tennessee side, but she worked a 24-hour gas station, and these two local cops came in, and she knew them over the years because they worked the graveyard shift too. And it's like 3 or 4 in the morning, and they were both just tore up, and they told her the story about what they had found. They had been up to the scene and how it was kind of getting covered up, and they would never come out on record while they were on, before they were retired. But supposedly they both came out and did one or two interviews after they were retired talking about it. But she was kind of the most vocal one about it. And I think she even wrote a book, and she's passed away now in like her 70s or 80s a couple of years ago. But that whole thing is interesting. Not just with that, but all the sightings. That there are credible people who have had sightings of dogmen. They're werewolf type creatures, and even Bigfoot. It's a big Bigfoot hotspot too. And there's some really shady stuff that the Forestry Service has done, and even TVA, because originally TVA owned all the property. Well, they stole all the property. Excuse me, allergies, man. They basically stole all the property, made everybody move out, and stole it to put the two dams up. Used to be known as Land Between the Rivers, and then they dammed up the Tennessee River and Cumberland River and made the Kentucky Lake and Lake Barkley, and moved all these people out of these three different towns. And it's just one of those places of high strangeness. Kind of like Skinwalker Ranch is well known. You got, the Bermuda Triangle, you got the Alaska Triangle. It's like those places, the Bridgewater Triangle up in New England. Like it's just weird all around. There's reports of everything out there, even UFOs. But the government's done some shady things out there. The TVA and the Forestry Service that runs it now, they've just inexplicably closed campgrounds. And one of the ones that they closed was the most popular campground in Land Between the Lakes. And they just closed it one day back in the 80s and said that they were renovating it when it didn't even need renovated, and just tore it down. It doesn't even exist anymore. I think some people have been out there, like Small Town Monsters went out there with Hellbent Holler and found the original parking lot, remnants of it, but Mother Nature's kind of taken back over. There's been weird stuff like that just seems like there's a cover up going on, that there is some kind of beast out there, something going on out there.
Yeah, I definitely believe there's something going on my Tales Untold channel. I've got a video I did based on some FOIA information from the blackvault.com about canine experimentation that was going on like back in I think the 50s or 60s or something. And that's kind of the conspiracy theory, if you will, that they were trying to make some kind of super soldier type creature, and there may be some human DNA in there, and
Yeah.
who knows? I don't know what to believe, but it's a frightening prospect anyway.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like I said, you've got towns out there that are completely underwater, graveyards that are underwater. You can just be driving through. I've been to Land Between Lakes many times throughout my life, and you'll just be driving up some of the unmaintained roads, and there's just a staircase to nowhere that used to be the front of somebody's house. Or you'll see like irises and buttercups planted in a certain spot by the road where somebody's mailbox used to be. And then you'll just come upon a cemetery out in the middle of the woods, that's unmaintained and anything. It's just headstones among the trees. And
Yeah,
really
there's a lot of
places.
places like that in southeastern Kentucky too. Some of those old mining towns and things.
Yeah.
I've been way back out in the woods, like up beyond Yamacraw and places like that near Stearns and Whitley City, where you'll find an old foundation, or you'll see flowers or something that's been, perennials that been planted there eons ago. That's all that's still left to even indicate that somebody was there. That's an odd feeling when you come across that when you're just out hoofing it through the woods.
Yeah, I like with Hellbent Holler. They're a couple that have a YouTube channel, and they go out exploring out through there a lot. They have a lot of videos on LBL, but they talk about finding abandoned tents and things like that all the time, where people just left their belongings, and whether they just ran out of the woods because they were scared or something actually disappeared them. I don't know. Have you come across any missing person mystery stuff on the channel from LBL?
Not that I can think of off the
Yeah.
top of my head, but I think that would bear looking into, because there, like you mentioned, there are a lot of triangle areas.
Yeah.
And I just found out about one the other day that I hadn't heard of. It was kind of what was it? It was like Birmingham, Atlanta, and Chattanooga. There's supposedly some triangle there with a bunch of stuff going on. I had Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress, on the episode before this one. Do you know her? Have you ever had her on?
I have not. I have not.
She's one to talk to. She does a lot of dogman stuff. She's one of these boots on the ground researchers stuff. They go out and look for dogman
Yeah.
and Bigfoot and things like that. And then she was talking about that. But yeah, I'll put you in touch with her. She'd be a good guest for you to have. And then likewise, she has a show. You'd be a good fit for each other.
Yeah, that area of just that area, like we're talking about with triangles, is just like I said. Hopkins was only 20 minutes from Katie's, which is the Kentucky end of Land Between the Lakes. But I've never really spent much time out there. I'm not a camper, but I've never spent much time out there after dark. But when we've drove down the trace, which goes down the middle from one end to the other, coming back home, back down into Dover, Tennessee, there's a different air about it. Even on the Tennessee end, you have Fort Donelson, which is right on the Cumberland River, and that place is kind of eerie and creepy. And there's some stories out there, some ghost stories of rangers, park rangers, seeing things and hearing things out there, because there are a few river battles and things fought at Fort Donelson, and the original earthworks and things are still there. The original powder magazine is still under the hill. You can't go in it anymore. They've got it blocked off, but it's all stacked stone under this big mound, and interesting place. But yeah, that whole area is weird. Even down into like you get closer to Dixon, Tennessee, Cumberland Furnace is an old town that still has lots of stories at different places because it's just been around for so long with mining and things like that. And so, yeah, Tennessee and Kentucky are just two weird states. The thing about Kentucky that I've learned is they actually embrace it.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. And I like to see people do that, especially little communities like you're talking about Hopkinsville and then West Virginia with the Mothman and the things like that. I love to see. It's become just part of the local economy there. They have festivals
Yeah.
and things, and it keeps all that folklore, whatever you want to call it, high strangeness alive.
Well, the state tourism board has a program called Kentucky After Dark, and
Oh
it's a
yeah, I
list.
hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, it's a list of. They have a website that you can go to, Kentucky After Dark, and it's a list of all the haunted places, like real haunted historical places that you can go to all over Kentucky, and also the jump scare Halloween ones as well. But anything spooky after dark that's just weird, Hopkinsville Goblin stuff's on there and all that too. But most of it's places that you can go, like Octagon Hall and places like that you can actually paranormal investigate. But yeah, it's called Kentucky After Dark. I'm trying to get the Night House on there. So.
Yeah, that'd be great. Now, since you're a resident there, or at least a part-time resident in
Yeah.
Hopkinsville, what's your take on the Goblin? What do you think that was? Do you think it was something from outer space, a misidentified existing animal, a true cryptid? What's your take on it, just from what you know about the area? And that may not give you any particular insight since it happened so long ago.
I think from meeting Geraldine and talking to her, I mean, I didn't really pick her brain yet because I want to have her on the show, to talk to her in depth about it. But from what I know about the case, I mean, they seem pretty credible. I mean, they were, just a country family, farmers that they didn't have any reason to make that up. Well, why would they make that up?
Yeah, they weren't, they didn't have anything to
Yeah,
gain from it and
right.
stood to be ridiculed and all kinds of stuff. And sometimes, that's the people that have the wildest encounters, like a Betty and
Yeah,
Barney Hill or somebody like that, or Travis Walton, where it's subjected them to all kinds of things that they probably didn't want. And
yeah,
I can't imagine doing it, on purpose just to,
yeah.
with the thought of, oh, we'll write a book and make a bunch of money.
Well, and they didn't. That nothing was ever done about it until Geraldine and her sister grew up. And some of the kids that were involved grew up, and they started. People were intrigued by it, so they started um, the kind of a little festival in Kelly, which is right outside of Hopkinsville, which is where they lived and where it happened. That's why it's called the Kelly Hopkinsville incident. But um, up until COVID, they were doing that little festival, and then COVID kind of killed it off. And so now they're going to kick it back up, like I said, in Hopkinsville. But one of the things that makes me believe it even more I don't know what they came up against. I don't know if it was aliens, interdimensional. I don't know. I don't think it was misidentification. I think what they saw is what they saw, because
Yeah,
two of them
that's when they
independently.
try it out. You know, like
Yeah.
The Mothman. Oh, it was a sandhill crane. I've seen a sandhill crane. There's no way you're going to mistake it for what the people that saw
Right.
the Mothman saw,
Right.
in my opinion.
Well, and these are country people who are going out and hunting and things. They know what owls look like.
Yeah,
You know, they know what the great horned owl looks like, and barred owls and things. And two of them separately drew a similar creature. And the sheriff of Christian County, that's who one of them finally snuck off and got the sheriff's attention, because they didn't even have a home phone, I don't believe. And the sheriff came out and investigated, and he told the newspaper he had no reason not to believe them. He couldn't find any evidence that they were lying, because when they, cops will separate people and compare stories, and he, in his investigation, he said, the bullet holes were all where they said they were shooting, and some of the damage to the house, where these creatures were doing things to the house and shooting back. I believe they were shooting some kind of laser or something back. There was damage to the house and things, and claw marks and things, and just weird stuff all around. So, the sheriff don't have anything to gain either out of it. If anything, he probably would have rather said that it never happened, that the people were crazy. It's a mass delusion, But you had like J. Allen Hynek went out there and said it was swamp gas. Back Project Blue Book.
Yeah.
That was one of the cases that he investigated, Project Blue Book. But then when he got done with Project Blue Book, J. Allen Hynek believed that he found a lot of evidence for extraterrestrials. Just during Project Blue Book, he was kind of forced into saying, it was swamp gas and things. That's where the swamp gas thing comes from, is him. And but the Kelly Hopkinsville incident is one of the things that he investigated and said it was swamp gas.
I don't know. I've heard that about things. I've got a graphic that I use. I've got a UFO, a UAP, and related phenomena channel that I do called From Beyond, and I've got a graphic that I like to put up over there sometimes in some of these cases. You see it on your screen there. U.S. Air Force aircraft identification chart. Weather balloon, weather balloon, weather balloon, weather balloon, weather balloon. And then the one that's actually is a weather balloon says swamp gas,
Right.
and then everything else is a weather balloon. You've got the Bat plane, the Starship Enterprise, Sputnik, the SR-51, all kinds of stuff. But I think sometimes that just, I don't know. I've heard people claim like the Brown Mountain Lights. Oh, it's swamp gas. I don't buy that. I've seen the Brown Mountain Lights. You ever been over there to look at that?
I have not. I've seen documentaries and stuff about it, though.
Yeah, it's an experience. And I went when I lived up in Mountain City, Tennessee, which is the extreme northeastern tip of Tennessee. I wasn't too far from Brown Mountain, and I went over there several times, and I saw it every time. I have no idea. The first time I saw it, I thought, it looked like somebody running through the woods with a lantern or something. I thought, okay, that's some kind of hoax. But I spent the night up there above Wiseman's View. And the next morning when I woke up and you could actually see over there, it's like sheer cliffs. And I'm like, well, there's no way anybody was running around in there. And then the other times that I saw them, you could see them come up out of the gorge there, Wiseman's Gorge, and go up over the top. I even had them fly up above me. Sometimes they would be one color, they would change colors, or one would split into smaller ones, and they'd all move around independently and then maybe come back together. I don't know. Wow. And the standard explanations, it's reflections from car lights. Well, they saw those in there before automobiles are in that area. Same with trains and things. So I don't know other than it's weird, and it's worth the trip if you're ever in that area.
Well, and that's not the only place that has been reported. Like Mount Shasta has those lights reported as well. Even here in Middle Tennessee, we have something called the Chapel Hill light.
Yeah,
and I've been up there.
I've seen those lights up on Mount Shasta.
Yeah.
I went. I was when I lived in Oregon. I went to San Francisco to speak at that UFO conference. I spent a couple of nights near Mount Shasta's McLeod, which is just down the road. I stayed at the Shasta View Lodge because it has such an impressive view of Mount Shasta. And I went out. It's about 2:00 in the morning. I still smoked cigarettes at the time. I was out there smoking a cigarette, and I just had this intense feeling like somebody's watching me or somebody's looking at me. And I whipped around, and it was the mountain was right there behind me.
Yeah.
And then I saw these lights up on there, and it wasn't the small lights like I saw at Brown Mountain. I mean, these lights would have been the size of an aircraft, like
Yeah.
an airliner, but there was nothing there, no reason for those lights. And you got those weird lenticular cloud formations and things.
Right. Right.
And supposedly the whole thing is the whole of Mount Shasta is just a international airport for UFOs. You got Bigfoot, you've got all kinds of stuff there, but it is a very unique place. It doesn't even look real. I mean, it looks like a Bob Ross painting or something.
Yeah.
But
It's the Lemurians. It's all the Lemurians at Mount Shasta.
yeah, and underground cities there, and
Yeah.
all kinds of creepy stuff.
Yeah, it's yeah, the paranormal just fascinates me all around.
Yeah,
Just these weird pockets of paranormal. One thing I find interesting too, like with saying, like Tennessee and Kentucky have lots of paranormal haunted places and paranormal stories and that type of stuff. Other states you don't really hear about, like Mississippi and Alabama, Iowa, North Dakota, South Dakota. You really don't hear stories come out of those places, which is kind of odd to me.
yeah. I don't know. There's something about the South, I think, in particular. Yeah, you've got stuff in California, all up that I-5 corridor, all up to north from San Francisco. You've got Mount Shasta,
Yeah,
you've got the Oregon Vortex, and all the way up, Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier, Olympic National Park, National Forest, all the way up into Canada and beyond. But I don't know if it's kind of like the ley lines that they have in the UK or something like that. And I think that's kind of what those triangles are. There are certain points that between those points, weird things happen. And I
right.
don't believe in coincidence. I think it's synchronicity.
Yeah, yeah. And I think also, I mean, all around the earth, we have these different magnetic fields coming out of the earth that are constantly around us. We just can't see them. And, it's constantly changing. I think there's something to do with that. And some of those places just kind of energize them to maybe a stronger magnetic field or something like that just kind of energizes for this paranormal activity stuff. But yeah, with the ley lines as well, you find a lot of weird correlations, synchronicities with ley lines across the world, with the pyramids and Stonehenge and things in the United States that are like Skinwalker Ranch lining up with places like that. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Now that's, I've never been to Skinwalker Ranch, but I'd had plans to go out there when I lived in New Mexico, but I never did make it over there. But I don't know, boy, there's a lot of weird stuff there. Portals and missing cows where they could see the hoof prints go right up to the edge of the woods and then no cow. And then the guy noticed like up above there, broken tree limbs, like something took it straight up out of there. So
Yeah.
something strange out there for
Yeah.
sure.
I had a guy on, and he owns the ranch that butts up to Skinwalker Ranch. And he's had some weird, crazy stuff go on his property. I believe it's Space Wolf Research. And I'm trying to think of his name. It's been a while since I talked to him. Great guy. Had a great conversation with him. But on his property, he had one of the crazy stories was he has a shipping container, a big metal shipping container that he uses for storage. And it got picked up and turned 180 degrees and set back down, and no drag marks, no nothing, and no explanation. And he has a guard shack with a guard in it. The guard never saw anybody come in or out, and so there's no explanation but he said the container, when they noticed it, the container was magnetized for like days and weeks after this event happened. So but he sees stuff like Skinwalker Ranch too, with UAPs, UFOs, all of that stuff. His ranch is not part of the Mesa, but he shares a fence line with Skinwalker Ranch.
And I noticed that when I lived out there in the high desert in New Mexico, there's a lot of, I mean, that's Skinwalker country out there. I lived right in edge of the Navajo reservation, the Dine, what they call themselves. There was a place just up the road there where I went to called Chokecherry Canyon, where back in the 70s there was some local white kids had taken an older native person out there, and they used to like to pick them up and kind of be mean to him and stuff, and then leave him out in the desert. And this guy, they took him a little too far and actually ended up killing him.
Wow.
And they got caught. And but the judge, it's kind of the old boy network, just gave him a slap on the wrist and let him go. But there was a shaman or a medicine man like, oh no, that ain't happening. And he put a curse on these kids, and something weird happened to every single one of them. And Chokecherry Canyon was where they killed that guy, but you can still feel that up there. I mean, it looked like something out of the Flintstones, going up there with all the rocks and
Yeah.
trees and
Yeah.
stuff. But you could feel just something. There's something there, and there's places like that in Tennessee, North Carolina, northern Georgia, there around Chickamauga. Lynn, or I'm not sorry, not Lynn, but Jessica Jones that I was talking about. She lives in outside Atlanta, I think, and we were talking about Chickamauga and the stuff down there at Fort Oglethorpe and Snodgrass Hill and Old Green Eyes and all that. Have you ever done any
Yeah.
investigating down there?
I have not, but I've done research for the book about Chickamauga, in particular, and all the crazy stuff with green eyes and the one pond that turns red, blood red.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crazy stuff in Chickamauga from the Civil War battle. Lookout Mountain is another one
Yeah.
where they had a big
Down there.
battle, and that has a lot of weird
And
stuff as well.
Ruby Falls, the underground waterfall there. Another thing that you may know about, you may not. Have you ever been to the Lost Sea in Sweetwater, Tennessee?
I have not. I've never even heard of that.
That was a big deal back when I was a kid. You'd see billboards for it. You stopped at a
Yeah.
gas station, they'd have those little brochures. Check into that. As far as I know, it's still open. There's like prehistoric bones and things that they found in there from animals and things. They had glass bottom boats, and it's I think they used to build it as the world's largest underground lake or something like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it
yeah.
is impressive. But yeah, Sweetwater there
Yeah.
in East Tennessee, and it's got haunted history. And I think it's part of the same cave system that connects into Mammoth Cave. We did a video about Mammoth Cave for Tales Untold, and there's so much. I don't
Yeah.
know. I think there's stuff underground, whether it's these deep underground military bases or um, yeah, I mean, dogmen, mimics, whatever. I've covered a lot of cases like that where somebody would hear a voice or some sound, a human sound coming out of a cave, a person crying, or somebody that knew their name, or somebody that sounded like somebody they knew that was either deceased or in another state. One guy even heard himself calling to himself from a cave. I don't know about you, but if I hear anything calling to me from a cave, I'm going the other direction. I'm not going to go
Yeah.
in a cave and see what it is. Had a guy up in up near Mountain City when I lived up there. Roan Mountain, they've got a fireball up there that they've seen, and there's a Fiddler's Rock, which is a guy that used to charm rattlesnakes until he got bitten to death by
Yeah.
them. They still hear his ghost up there. But
Yeah.
the guy told me he knew of a cave. It's either on or near Roan Mountain that there was a spider in there as big as a house cat, in his words. And he said, I'm talking about the body of the spider is the size of a cat's body. He said, I'm not counting the legs and stuff. But that was a hard no for me. I don't like spiders. I almost burned a house down one time trying to get rid of a black widow with a lighter and a can of
I've
hairspray. But I can't imagine a spider the size of a cat.
I've actually heard those legends in my research for the book. I've come across some of those when I was researching Tennessee cryptids, and there's lots of interesting Tennessee cryptids that are specific to Tennessee like that that I haven't heard anywhere else. But you're talking about Mammoth Cave. Um, I've gone quite a few times as a kid, but we went last year because I'd never been there as an adult. And we were coming back we had spent the weekend in Louisville doing some paranormal stuff up there, and we were coming back and went to Mammoth Cave, and we paid for the extra tour, and they take you where they have the TB shacks down in the cave because they thought the
I
cave air.
covered those.
Yeah. Um, and I asked the ranger about it, and he said that people have experienced lots of things, especially where those TB shacks are, as far as like
Yeah,
ghostly
seen
stuff.
people down there.
Yeah,
There was a enslaved family that
yeah,
somebody saw down there, and they did use a lot of enslaved people as cave guides at one time, and apparently some of them are still there.
yeah. It's weird walking through there and just seeing these like stone, just these buildings in there, like in the middle of this giant cave, because it kind
Yeah,
of opens up right there. But they also turn the lights off right there, and to let
yeah,
you see how really dark it is in there, and it's pretty crazy.
and it's
Um,
dark. Let me
yeah,
tell you,
yeah, yeah.
in any
It,
kind of cave. But I was with there was somebody years and years ago one time, and she kind of misspoke, and she said, "We ought to come back in the daytime sometime." And I'm like, because it was at nighttime, like, you're in a cave underground. Daytime ain't going to make no difference. And she realized the folly of her statement and didn't have anything
yeah.
else to say. But
Mammoth Cave to me was just eerie and weird. There's just a
yeah,
weird feeling down in
and
there.
those TB buildings, and the
Yeah,
guy that was over that, he thought for whatever reason that that would be a good environment for those people,
yeah,
but it turned out to be just the opposite.
yeah,
And I think he ended up dying of TB in a strange twist of fate there.
yeah, yeah. He did. And they also used to mine saltpeter down there,
Yeah.
and so you had miners get killed and things where they had the mines. But
And then Floyd Collins, poor guy, get trapped and died in there. That was
yeah,
when I was a little kid. My dad had some 78s, and that was one he had, the Ballad of Floyd Collins. And the first time I heard that, it scared the crap out of me. And they told me that story. And I've got a video in that video I made about Mammoth Cave on Tales Untold. I play that digitized version of that 78 RPM. But just and I've heard some stuff up there. Some of there's a book. I can't remember the author. I mentioned it in the video, but she talks about some of
yeah,
the strange things there. There's heard people like talking on the intercoms and stuff when the cave was closed and locked, but there still sound like somebody in there. Or I heard another story where they saw a pair of disembodied legs running down a hill there. Somebody like looked like the lower part of overalls with some farm boots, but
yeah,
there was nothing in them. And that's to me, that's more scary than a full body apparition. If
yeah.
I just saw a pair of legs, I mean, like, nope, nope, let me out of here.
I think me
But
and you talked about that when we talked about Gatlinburg because
yeah,
there's a story at Gatlinburg too.
there at that the Rocky Top
Yeah,
murders up there, they've seen the lady's legs run around the
yeah.
water fountain there. I'm like, that gives me chills
Yeah.
just to think about it.
Or
Well,
just a
Eric,
phantom hand or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's creepy. We're almost out of time here, brother, but I want to thank you for joining me tonight. Just briefly, let people know where they can find you, and I'll put links in the description as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Steve. I always love chatting with you. The Unseen Paranormal Podcast is available anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's also on YouTube. I only most of the time do audio, but I do put it up on YouTube because I do have a good following there. But anywhere you listen to music or podcast, Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. Apple now you can get on your browser. You don't even have to have iTunes if you're on a desktop. You can just get on Apple on your browser. I got an email about that the other day. But the Unseen Paranormal is all there on Instagram, X, and Facebook. You can find us. And then the Night House is the Night House KY .com for the website, and the Night House on Facebook and YouTube. It's the Night House Hopkinsville. And you can check out Strangely Haunted on YouTube and on Facebook.
Good deal. Well, thanks again, Eric, for joining me here. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. On behalf of Eric Freeman Sims and myself, we'll see you a little further on down the trail. Tell your animals we said hi. Good night, everybody.